Hello, everyone. The tragedy of Dr. Dre is beyond heartbreaking, not because his story is defined solely by suffering, but because behind the colossal success, the Grammy victories, the billionaire headlines, and the cultural dominance that reshaped hip-hop forever, lies a life marked by loss, betrayal, sacrifice, inner battles, and emotional wounds that fame could never heal. And as we peel back the layers of his journey, from his childhood in Compton to the global icon he became, we see a man who carried more pain than most fans will ever realize. Pain that shaped his music, his identity, and the guarded expression on his face that rarely reveals what weighs on his heart. Born Andre Young, Dre grew up in a world where opportunity was scarce, violence was common, and dreams were often crushed before they even formed. And while he found escape in music, in headphones that drowned out the chaos, nobody around him could have predicted how far he would climb or how much he would have to lose along the way. His early life was already marked by instability, shifting between schools, navigating a fractured home environment, and watching friends fall victim to the streets while he clung desperately to beats and turntables. When NWA exploded onto the scene, Dre became a force, a pioneer, a sonic architect who could turn raw anger into revolutionary sound. But behind the meteoric rise were bitter internal conflicts, financial disputes, and betrayals that left deep emotional scars. Dre trusted people who didn't always have his best interests at heart, and he paid the price with years of legal wars, fractured friendships, and a reputation that was constantly under scrutiny. The departure from Ruthless Records, the unpredictable partnership with Suge Knight, and the dangerous environment of Death Row Records pushed Dre into a darkness that outsiders barely glimpsed. He watched violence unfold around him, saw careers destroyed, friendships broken, and dreams twisted into nightmares. And while the world saw him as powerful, untouchable, and influential, behind the scenes he battled the fear that the chaos would consume everything he'd built. Even after leaving Death Row to create Aftermath, an act of courage that many forget required walking away from millions and rebuilding from nothing, Dre faced ridicule, criticism, financial instability, and doubt from industry insiders who believed his best years were behind him. But Dre pushed forward, believing in raw talent like Eminem, 50 Cent, and Kendrick Lamar, changing the landscape of hip-hop yet again, even while privately wrestling with exhaustion, pressure, and the weight of carrying an entire label on his shoulders. And then came the losses that no amount of fame could shield him from. The devastating death of his son Andre Young Jr., a tragedy that shattered him in ways he rarely speaks about. People close to Dre say he never fully recovered, that the grief settled into his body like a permanent shadow, a wound that music could not close. And though he continued working, releasing masterpieces, and overseeing careers, something in him changed. A heaviness, a quietness, a deeper sense of isolation. Over the years, Dre has endured health scares, most notably his brain aneurysm, which nearly killed him and stunned fans around the world, a reminder that even the strongest icons are fragile and mortal. Doctors revealed he was lucky to survive, and friends said he came out of the hospital more introspective than ever, reevaluating everything from relationships to legacy, realizing how close he had come to leaving behind a world still filled with unfinished dreams, unresolved pain, and unreleased music. His personal relationships, too, became battlegrounds of heartbreak, from turbulent partnerships to the highly publicized and emotionally draining divorce that exposed private chapters of his life to global scrutiny. The legal battles, accusations, and public commentary painted a portrait of a man both powerful and deeply wounded, struggling to maintain control of his narrative, while his personal world unraveled in front of millions. On top of all this, Dre carries the burden of knowing that the empire he built, one of the most successful in music history, came at the cost of sleepless nights, strained friendships, lost time with family, and the constant pressure to be the unbreakable titan the public expects him to be. Few people understand the loneliness of being the leader, the visionary, the perfectionist, whose every triumph masks 1,000 unseen struggles. And yet, perhaps the most tragic element of Dr. Dre's life is the endless cycle of reinvention that fans celebrate, but rarely consider the emotional cost of. The constant pressure to deliver greatness, to push boundaries, To stay ahead of a genre he helped invent, all while silently carrying grief and the unspoken trauma of decades in an industry filled with volatility. Despite everything, Dre remains a symbol of resilience, a man who transformed adversity into art, pain into power, and chaos into legacy. But when you look closer, when you examine the cracks behind the success, you see not a superhero, but a human being who has endured more than most, who has buried pieces of himself along the way, who has been burned by the very world he helped build. The tragedy of Dr. Dre is not just in the losses he suffered, but in the emotional armor he had to forge to survive. A lifetime of guarding his vulnerability, of burying his pain so deeply that few people truly know the man behind the myth. And as fans reflect on his journey, we see a story that is both inspiring and heartbreaking. A reminder that even icons bleed, even legends struggle, and even the strongest among us carry silent battles that no one ever sees. Thanks for watching.